Well, hello everyone. I'm Jill Bloom, publisher of Walls and Ceilings, roofing contractor and building enclosure. I'm here today with Art Eisner and Rick D'Amato, the editors of Roofing Contractor, and so honored to also be with us today, Trent Cotney, CEO of Cotney Construction Law. Trent is the leading expert in the roofing industry, but represents all contractors in the construction trades. So we always appreciate his insight for the wall and ceiling industry as well. And Trent is an incredible advocate for the industry and very gracious with his time. So thank you very much, Trent.
My pleasure.
And to start us off, Trent, let's start with the state of essential business and places where COVID-19 cases just seem to continue to spike. Mm-hmm. And we're seeing shutdowns in California, and others are considering scaling back. What are contractors dealing with right now?
Sure. Well, I want to welcome everybody. Jill, Art, Rick, it's always a pleasure to talk to you guys. And, we are starting to see a lot more shutdowns. I don't think we're in the same analysis of where we were at the beginning as to what is an essential business and what is not. But, I know in particular, San Francisco has seen some shutdowns. I know that other projects have shut down. And I know that a lot of projects that were in the queue are now no longer going to happen. And that includes both private work and public work. I think I mentioned on our last conversation that I've had contractors call me in 3 different states, 3 different jurisdictions saying that all their school work is gone. Okay. And for those contractors that specialize in schoolwork, that hurts, And what I mean by that is that there's no more work for the rest of 2020 and they're holding off on 2021 to see what happens. That same kind of mentality is happening throughout. There were all these, mixed use developments that were going up where there's a combination of residential along with, commercial type establishments, restaurants, bars, all that is on hold. And what we've really seen is I've seen owners and developers on the commercial end look to repurpose a lot of their projects. They're focused now on really 3 critical things that I see. One is supply chain partnerships, making sure that they're capable of looking for a turnkey type resolution. They're looking to minimize the number of people that are on job sites. So things like design build, things where it's an all-in-one capability has become even more important. They're looking for modular designs, things where they can bring stuff assembled, install it, get out of there. So there's minimal exposure. Okay, that's something that's obviously very important. And then they're looking for, technological integration to help limit job site exposure. And past discussions, I've talked to you guys about how, the job site trailer is almost a thing of the past now. That thing was a petri dish to begin with. With COVID-19, you don't want 10 people in a job site trailer. So the owners and developers now that have projects that are ongoing are having to rapidly evolve to make sure that they stay relevant. If they don't, then they'll be shuttered up and those projects will remain at a standstill. So I would expect that you'll continue to see some job site shutdowns. I think you're going to see certain jurisdictions and areas have limitations on what can be built and how it can be built because of COVID-19 guidelines. And I anticipate that this is going to be lasting for a while now.
Trent, that's really interesting to see now that this is spilling over into that, the design build community and how they're approaching the buildings of the future. I do want to follow up the evolution process you started to talk about. Contractors are going to face that same pressure now, aren't they? And what are some of the things they need to start thinking about?
Right. So, here I have a lot of mottos, and here in the office one of our core motto that I say over and over and over again is improvise, adapt, overcome. And the idea behind that is that as a business owner, if you put yourself in a box and you don't evolve, then you will die out. Okay. And this is what I want to impart to the viewers right now. And this is something that I think is critical to understand. If you look at history, and I'm a big history buff, if you look at history, there are times where there's exponential change that occurs. You think about, the turn of the 1900s where there were cars, the transition from horse to car. And there was a lot of pain points. There was a lot of people that said, no one's going to do that. It's stupid. But the people that embraced it and moved forward radically changed how they did business. Okay. Think about it with regard to the roofing industry. You know, the old, horse and buggy would carry the roofing materials around. Those people that embraced, modern equipment were able to do things more, efficiently, faster, better. This is one of those times. This is one of those times in history where, eons from now, or, generations from now, people will look back and say, this was a driving force in change. Okay. We will never go back to the way things were. And that's something that people need to embrace and understand. What we need to do is say, okay, how do we turn this bad situation into a great situation for our business? How do we switch the paradigm, make sure that we're tip of the spear and that we're taking advantage of that? Okay. Platitudes aside, what does that mean? Okay. What it means is, there needs to be forward-thinking idea. What I always do is I figure out what the customer wants and I work backwards from that. Okay, what the customers want now, regardless of whether it's residential or commercial or whatever it might be, is they want great service, they want great product. That's not changed. What has changed is they want a safe working environment. They want the capability to get things done quicker, faster, better, with less person-to-person communication. Okay, the majority of that is accomplished through technology, but there's also a lot of stuff that needs to happen in the background through changes in logistics, through changes how you do production. I see this as a monumental period within construction, because I think that if you think about how construction has been done for hundreds and hundreds of years, it's very linear, right? It's owner contracts with prime contractor contracts with sub contracts with sub, they each have suppliers. And there's a lot of inefficiency built in that system, just in the paperwork alone and the admin overhead. Okay. You are going to see a rapid evolution of construction that has to happen in order for businesses to remain profitable. And they will absolutely, it's something when I look back at construction during the 30s and the 40s, during the Depression and World War II, you see a lot of contractors that became very, very profitable. And the way they became profitable is they scaled back, they worked with the resources they had, and they were able to do laps around their competition because they embraced the change. Okay, you've got to be open to embracing that change. Otherwise, you're going to run into some real problems.
So specifically to this situation in COVID-19, is part of that embracing not just the change, you've got to maintain your health and safety of your workforce. Are you hearing, particularly in states that are seeing spikes, are you hearing from contractors about troubles with testing? Is that becoming an issue? And how are they handling, positive cases on site?
Yeah, it's a huge issue, and it depends, it varies depending on which state you're in, but I've heard reports of delays in getting tests back from anywhere from 5 days to 2 weeks. By the time you get it back, the quarantine period is usually run. So the CDC has put out great guidance and an FAQ that really goes through how to deal with these types of employees. And we were fortunate enough to speak for NRCA last Friday, on advanced HR and safety policies that you can implement with your company. One of the things that we really recommend is always erring on the side of caution. So even if you don't have a positive test back, if they're exhibiting any of the symptoms of COVID-19, you need to treat it as COVID-19. You don't want to take any chances, because it is an absolute killer. And each time, even though the percentages are always in your favor, it's like going to Vegas. How many times are you going to roll that dice before something bad happens? And you don't want to be the employer that lets that happen.
Got it. So for contractors that aren't in areas where spikes are happening, or things may, the curve has been flattened, at least for a bit, what are you telling them? What can they learn from the experience other contractors in those spike states are feeling? So
let me put it this way, okay? My dad's a great man. I love my dad. Okay, he grew up tough. He started on a farm. Then we had a tire shop, and he grew up in Jacksonville, back when Jacksonville wasn't much anything. He has a lot of country sayings, okay? And I was talking to him the other day. I looked to him for advice, and he described this as our attempt at dealing with COVID-19 as peeing on a forest fire. And I appreciate that. And what he meant by that was our attempts are not uniform. Okay. And that's primarily because of how we're structured with states and a federal system, combined with an election year, combined with really adversarial politics. So what I would tell those contractors that are listening to this right now, that are like, you guys in Florida and Texas and California, we don't have that problem. You're going to have that problem. Okay. And it's just going to keep cycling and cycling and cycling through, because our attempts to control this are not uniform and are not systematic. Okay. And as soon as somebody has it under control, I'm here in Tampa, we had no problems at all during the first 2 or 3 months. Nothing. Now we're, 9,000, 10,000 people infected a day. It's crazy. Okay. So I think you're going to see that. I think, the idea that our testing efforts are not where they need to be. We are not doing any kind of contact tracing. And to be honest, given how rampant it is, I'm not sure we could. So there's a lot of things that other countries have enacted because of how they are set up politically that have allowed them to institute the contact tracing, the lockdowns, all that kind of stuff that have decreased the exposure. It's gonna just keep cycling through. And I don't know what the answer is. Again, I'm not a doctor. Thank God I'm not a politician. But my advice to any contractor out there is get prepared, because it's coming back your way. It'll just keep cycling through for a while now.
Okay, thanks, Trent. Ricky had a couple questions.
Got you on mute there, Rick.
This technology is tough on an old guy.
Oh, you're good, man.
I got to tell you. You had mentioned, you threw out a few numbers and about what's going on in Tampa and others. And I've been curious, a lot of the media, and us included, and we've been keeping up with the COVID-19 cases, recoveries, deaths, whatever's going on in the U.S. and parts of the U.S., keeping up mainly with Johns Hopkins, the numbers that they're putting out there. And one of the concerns for me has always been, well, what does that compare to? And where do these numbers come from? And what does it look like? Give us your spin. Are we trading with the best information available there? Is it actionable? Give us your spin on the numbers.
So I think we are dealing in politicized data. And one of the things I remember, I didn't pay a lot of attention to most of my college classes, but one of them was Sociology 101. In that class, one of the first things they said was statistics can be manipulated. Back then, it was a lot harder to manipulate statistics. So, there wasn't the internet, there wasn't all the stuff we got now. But my concern is I think that the data is reliable plus or minus 15%. That's about what I would say. So I don't put a tremendous amount of faith in what the press or what statistics say, because I know that there is such a political leaning, whether it's blue, red, or in between, that these stats are going to be manipulated. What I put my faith in, and I've said it before, is that phone. Okay, my conversations with contractors, that tells me what it's like on the ground. And I know there's a problem. I know it. And it's not something that's fabricated. There's a lot of conspiracy theories out. Trust me, I've had contractor after contractor after contractor call with crews that are infected, with crew members that have died, and I've been dealing with this. At first, when I was dealing with it, it was the areas that were spiking during the original time, New York, Chicago to a certain extent, some of the Northeast. Now all the calls are California, Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, Florida. Almost, every single day we're getting calls and calls and calls and calls. And that is what I rely on. So I guess to answer your question, I think the data is somewhat reliable, but I like to back up that data with my real world analysis.
Well, one of the things that the data will have an impact on is the scheduling of events that include a lot of people. We got news this morning that the Consumer Electronics Show, I believe it was in January, huge show in Las Vegas, tens and tens of thousands of people in attendance every year, has gone virtual. And it's not going to be held as a live event in Las Vegas like it has been for years. you've been to a few of these kind of events.
Mhm.
Tell us what you feel like works, doesn't work, and how it compares to going to a live event.
So I think the virtual trade shows and the virtual events are a great way to pivot off of the circumstances that we're in now. And I think, we'll continue to see an evolution of how things work and what's best and what's not best. But I do think it gives an option for people to kind of, not only get the educational component, but see what vendors have to offer. I think that, it's difficult to have trade shows in this kind of environment. It's just tough. I mean, there's really a bunch of different factors that come into play. One is liability. The other is vendor participation. It's a very difficult situation to be in. I think that ultimately, a lot of the virtual platforms that I've participated on have been great. And like I said, it's been, moving quickly to pivot in a situation that otherwise you wouldn't be able to do anything. But I think you're definitely going to see some additional evolution in it and greater participation. I think as technology expands and we're capable, right now we're pretty much 2D versions of ourselves, right? I've got to see you guys, you got to see me, but I think you're going to start seeing some additional technology be developed that will allow you to interact better with vendors. Okay. And that's the key thing, is you want to be able to sell your product, right? That's the selling point for a vendor. So that's what I'm looking forward to. I don't think we're there yet, but by this time, I think everything is being expedited quickly. So I would anticipate that over the next year or so, you're going to see some great new, ways to communicate through virtual platforms that we don't currently have.
Right, and a lot of this isn't new technology. And I was very interested in your comments on how the construction model is going to quickly and rapidly change. And we've seen a lot of those technologies really kind of come and go, mainly because of adoption.
Mm-hmm.
The contractors just wouldn't embrace these different ways.
Right.
Do you feel like is it the vendor, contractor to vendor, contractor to sub? Are those the kind of things that are going to take off first, or is it going to be more blockchain or building information modeling, BIM, things like that?
So again, I don't know anything, right? I'm just telling you what I think. So here's my thought. Okay, when I look at the technologies that are out there, it's hard for me to explain what blockchain is to a contractor, right? Mm-hmm. When you say Bitcoin, people think, Bitcoin. It's hard to describe that. BIM, it's not easy to use. Okay, it's not intuitive. What I think is going to happen is you are going to see a more intuitive technology that allows you to cut out some of the middlemen that go through down through the process. And I think you're going to see greater automation, through geofencing, through RFI tags, things like that allow you to know when materials have entered into a job site. You can do automatic payment that way. There's a lot of different things that I think that you can do to streamline the process and create inefficiency. Rick, I agree with you wholeheartedly. The construction industry, just like legal industry, very slow to change. Very slow to change. Okay, they will only change if they have to. They have to. That's the message. Is it's happened, and that's why even though we've had this technology forever, and I've never used it until COVID-19, they're going to have to figure something out if they want to remain profitable ahead of the competition. Those contractors that embrace it are going to be ahead.
So Art, I think we have to keep an eye on the very large contractors and other players in the industry. They're going to drive the rest of us.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And you're certainly talking about some technological innovations that we would probably see at a CES show, But now we'll have to take that into account virtually. Mm-hmm. I do want to bring it back, and let's put your politics hat back on for a time. We touched on this last time a bit, but since then the NRCA has officially issued an action alert to contractors and industry stakeholders to really get behind supporting a home improvement tax credit. Any updates on that efforts since we last spoke?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I can tell you, NRCA, Dwayne Musser, Terry Dorn, everybody in the lobbying side of things, those guys are working around the clock. And the home improvement tax credit has been presented, but there's a lot of competition out there. There's a lot of different views and acts and potential things that could go through. So I know they are constantly working on it. What's interesting, Art, is the GOP put out their version of the next stimulus package that was roughly $1 trillion. Previously, Democrats had put out one that was roughly $3 trillion. Now the real negotiations begin. But there's some very interesting stuff within the GOP's plan, in particular. They addressed the unemployment, the federal unemployment. Instead of $600, they said $200 more. There's a stimulus, $1,200 check out there to certain individuals that are entitled to it. There's a lot of those kinds of things, but it'll be interesting to see whether it is this round or maybe a next round. I would anticipate that the push is there, and it may end up morphing. It may end up changing. One of the things I've learned, dealing with lobbyists, working with our lobbyists, is I'm a point A to point B kind of guy, right? Politics doesn't work that way. Okay. A lot of times it's death by a thousand cuts. It's trying to figure out where do you have the most political momentum to strike when you need it. Obviously, the most pressing issue right now is the unemployment and the stimulus check. Okay, that's the biggest issue right now, because that runs out. The last check has already been issued to run, July 31st. That's it. So I think that there's going to be a greater focus on that in these negotiations, but expect to hear more down the road.
Okay. Well, what else are you hearing from contractors that's coming up in recent days?
So one of the big things, and we've touched on a little bit, is liability. Okay. And one of the things that obviously our team is still digesting it. I haven't had a chance to read the whole thing. I need a lot more coffee than I got here for that. But in the GOP's plan, there is an employer legal shield, which I find interesting, obviously. And it deals with COVID-19. Okay. And what this has done is they've approached it in a couple of different ways. They have said that there's an additional standard that those that want to come after employers have to use a higher standard. It's the same standard that you would use for gross negligence or willful or wanton conduct. Okay. In addition to that, they're putting in some other checks and balances in place. So if this goes through, then it could potentially limit small businesses and employers' liability for unintentional exposure of COVID-19. Okay, that's a big if. That's a big if, because one of the most powerful lobbying groups out there is the plaintiffs' lawyers, the bad guy lawyers. I'm joking, but it is a lot of political push there. So whether or not that happens on a federal level, I don't know. I know a lot of states have already been working on it. I know we're working on it here in Florida. That is something that's on a lot of people's minds, because they don't want to crawl their way through COVID just to have a mountain of lawsuits hit them from people that got exposed to COVID.
Okay, got it. Thanks for breaking that down. I did, while we've got your attention, I did want to ask you about a story we just posted on roofingcontractor.com, a sad one involving an accidental shooting on a rooftop. I'd encourage anyone to read the story for the details, but any message or warning to contractors out there about weapons on the work site?
Yeah, so you get into a lot of different legal issues here. You got Second Amendment issues, you got state and local requirements and rules and regulations, things of that nature. My advice, generally speaking, because it does vary based on jurisdiction to jurisdiction, is you want to have policies in your employee manual that talk about weapons on the job site and weapons in your home office. Okay. For example, we're in a concealed carry state here. You do have the capability of potentially limiting the ability to carry on premises. Obviously you can't carry in certain places like federal offices, things like that. It doesn't mean that you can't leave it in the trunk of your car or locked up somewhere, but there are limitations that you can do from an employer standpoint to try to protect against that kind of stuff. It's difficult. It's very difficult. And it's a difficult situation. And I've had to talk to employers about it. Some employers feel very strong one way. Some employers feel very strong another way. My suggestion is, if to the extent that you can, try to address it in your employee manual and make sure everybody understands what the proper procedures are. Because here's what I'm concerned about, okay? If somebody gets shot, whether it's intentionally or unintentionally or whatever it happens, there's the potential liability risk that you've got, right? And again, I don't know all the ins and outs of that particular incident, but I would want to make sure that I've got some protections in place from a manual standpoint to make sure that, I'm protected.
Got it. Okay, Trent, thanks for that great insight. Jill, I'll toss it back to you.
Yes, thank you again, Trent. We appreciate your time as always. An honor to have you speak with us. And thank you, everyone, for watching and joining us today. But Trent, if anyone has any questions for you, we had a lot of great questions today. How can they reach you?
Sure. They can always email me at tcotney@cotneycl.com. I check it 24 hours a day. Or they go to our website, cotneycl.com.
Sounds great. Yeah, I know that's true because I've shot you emails late night. I'm like, why is he responding so late? But also, if anybody watching needs to reach any of us at Roofing Contractor Walls and Ceilings, please go to roofingcontractor.com or wconline.com. Click on the Contact Us page tab. And while you're there, make sure you sign up for our free digital edition and our e-newsletter so you can stay up to date on all our great videos that are coming up in the future. And please stay safe and healthy, and we look forward to seeing everybody next time. Thanks again, Trent.
Thank you.